podcast about family, who we were then, who we are now, and who we are becoming. My dad was born in 1940, and times back then were different in a lot of ways.
And my mother said, "You better put that gun down. If you shoot me, I'm going to spank you like you've never been spanked before."
And then again, not that different at all.
Still picture us walking down the street, looking at the windows, looking at those travel brochures, looking at the diamonds and the little coffee shop and all that. And something I'll never forget.
My dad is a geologist, and I grew up on stories of his early career about riding elephants to work in Thailand, mine collapses, and how a Polaroid camera saved his life. I know these stories by heart, but it's time to share them with my own kids. Let's see what they have to say.
We were going to go to this other area. There's supposed to be this gigantic quartz vein. He said this vein was more than 50 feet across. It was a monster. And it was on the Burmese border. Now, we didn't have any elephants with us. I had a guy with me that had a machine gun he carried over his shoulder. What the hell do we need that for? Well, we kind of need it, he said. Okay. So in case we see snakes or tigers or something else like this, it's for protection. Well, okay, if you say so. We're going down this trail. Frank is going to go to one that's in the south, and I'm going to go to the one that's in the north. And we each have our guides with us and all of that. While I'm walking, I noticed that there are leeches everywhere. And I looked down on my britches. Now, I knew that there were leeches in there, so what I did is I actually had 2 pairs of blue jeans on and 3 pairs of socks, even though it was jungle. And the whole idea was that the leeches got on me, and they looked like little, what do you think, those things that go down the stairs? I can't remember. Starts an S. I'll think of the name a little bit later here. And this is how they were, like little tubes, and they would just move over to where you were. And I looked, and I was smoking at that time, and I would see them on me, and I would take my cigarette lighter, and I would burn them all off. Now, Frank, he wore shorts. And, of course, you can't tell when these animals are on you. And his legs would be bleeding all the time. He had these round circles that would be scars on his legs. Because what they do is once they fill up with blood, your blood doesn't congeal, and it bleeds for a long time. And, of course, they carry all kinds of diseases as well. I wasn't going to let that happen to me. I was going to suffer the heat no matter what. So as we were walking, I was always watching to see where the leeches were. And you could look underneath the leaves, and you could see them. And as you would walk near them, then they would start vibrating back and forth, hoping that you'd get close enough to where they could reach over and attach to you. So most of the time I was able to stay away from them. So then whenever we would stop to rest, I would always find an area that had no grass or anything else. And I would sit in the middle of it, and I would smoke my cigarette and drink my canteen of water, whatever it was. And I would look around me, and I could see these little leeches. They would start going, boom, 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 and they're going right toward me. Well, it would take a while for them to get there, and by the time they got there, I said, okay, let's go. So we continued to walk. Now, this was hard walking. This was up and down. Now, it was a jungle road there, and it was on the Burmese border. And we were going up and down these hills. And we got there pretty close to dark. And I said, where's the big quartz vein? There was no quartz vein. The guy lied to us. Anyway, they had a little bit of hydraulic mining in there, and they had a big rock shelter with gun ports there. What in the world is going on in here? Well, they said, well, the bandits come and they rob us all the time. So they had a stack of guns there, rifles and everything, sitting in the corner there. And we were going to spend the night there. They had a full load, and they said, well, they were really concerned that maybe the robbers are going to come here and try to get their stuff. So now the guide said with me, after I looked around and realized there's no quartz vein, I said, hell, there's no reason for us to stay here. And the guy says, good, because I'm afraid that they're going to come. So let's go back. I said, well, we won't make it. It's going to be dark. He says, well, I know of a little house that's about 4 or 5 miles away from here. Okay, so let's go. Let's not stay here, because as soon as we left, all the people went inside their rock hut, and they got their guns, and they were pointing them out the portals because they were expecting to be robbed that night. Oh, I don't want to be anywhere near this. And quite a few people had been killed there at that camp. So we start walking, and it is raining. Oh, you cannot believe how heavy the rain is. And, of course, raincoats doesn't make any difference because you're going to be hot and sweaty. About 4 hours later, now it's about 10 o'clock at night, maybe 10:30. Sure enough, there's this little house there. So we go in it, and the guide knew the people in there, so they let us sleep in there, and they fixed us some food, and I was really happy for that. Well, the next morning, we decided we'd go back to the camp, and it was pretty obvious what we're going to do is we're going to follow along this road that's literally the Thailand-Siamese border. And so I'm walking down the road with the group that I have, and they just walk too damn slow. I just can't stand it. I just can't walk that slow. So what I would do is I would walk way ahead of them, and I would find an outcrop, and I would look at the rocks and wait for them to catch up with me, and then I would walk ahead of them. So I was doing this for about... Now remember, it's going to take another 5 hours for us to get back to our camp. So as I'm walking there, I stopped at this one hill, and I happened to glance. There was another road that came into the side there. And on the side of my eye there, I saw about 6 people, and they were soldiers. And they had guns, and they were in camouflage. And suddenly I heard one of them say something to the other, and they all jumped into the brush. And I could see they took off their rifles, and they were aiming at where I was. Holy mackerel. So what I did is I slowly took out my rock hammer, and I went and did an exaggerated thing where I was looking at the rocks, knocking stuff rocks, and I'd make exaggerated things where I'd take my lens and I would look at it. To them, that would be absolutely strange. They had no idea what I was doing. I hope those other people come soon because I'm in real trouble, and I don't know if it's going to help because there's at least 6 of them, and they all got guns. And so I'm sitting here really, really nervous about what I'm going to do. And I look down the road that I'm traveling on, and here comes looks like to me, a young Thai, in his late 20s, wearing shorts and a T-shirt. And I'm sitting there kind of watching him, and looking over there, the soldiers, they hadn't moved yet. They were still in the brush. I could see the glint off their rifles. And the guy got closer and closer to me, and I didn't know what else to say. I said, "So, hello." And he says, "Hello there, old chap." I couldn't believe it. This guy spoke English. Well, it turns out that this guy was coming home from England, and he was going to Oxford, and he was the propaganda agent for the Burmese Free Army. His people were the Karens, and he was coming home to visit him, and I just happened to be there as he was coming on. And then I said, there's some people over there, about 8 or 10 people with guns in there. "Oh, yeah, it's part of my troop." So he yells over there, they yell back, and he yells a few more things, and they all get up, and they're laughing with each other, and they come by, and they pound on his chest and say, "Okay," and they went on. And so he and I, we sat there and talked about what I was doing there and all this kind of stuff. Wow, that was a close call. And by that time, the rest of the party caught up with me, so I stayed with the party the rest of the time. Now, Frank went to the south, and he again had the same problem. He just got tired of being slow, and he had a guy with a machine gun with him also. He got tired of waiting, and he walked ahead. And there's a little narrow trail that they knew they had to follow, and they decided that they're coming back. They went to go look at this place where there's supposed to be another quartz vein, and there was nothing there. We'd been lied to again. And again, remember, these are 6 to 8 hours away from our main camp, which we're walking through intense jungles with cobras and everything else in it, tigers and all that. Well, a small contingent, must have been 2 families with 2 adults and 3 almost grown male and a bunch of women come down the same trail. And they saw him. They started yelling at him and all this sort of stuff. He went into this open area. They were looking at him, asking questions, yelling at him. But see, we didn't know it at the time. Just thought about this in recent times. They thought we were American drug agents there to look at their opium crops is probably why they were so hostile. Well, they started circling him, and they were yelling at him. He was still way ahead of his group there. And then they took out the machetes, and they were circling, and they were sticking him. They were going around and kind of poking him a little bit, and he was bleeding a little bit, and they were yelling and laughing and so walking around in a circle. All of a sudden, ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta, the machine gun guy came. They all put their knives back in there, and he yelled at them, and they stopped, and they left him alone and went on. So that was Frank's experience going in that area.
It's the casual geologist stuff.
That's like TV show level shenanigans.
I was just walking ahead of these people real quick, and then thought I was gonna get killed, and then the leader of the group that I thought was gonna kill me just came up and went, they're good, and they all just started laughing and having a good time like they've known each other for years.
Well, he was from Oxford, and he was just the propaganda agent for the Burmese Free Army people.
At what point, I feel like knowing that my grandpa is a smart man, I don't see why he would hear the guy say, "Oh, I have this machine gun for snakes." I'm not pushing it. Like, what are you gonna do? Oh, okay. Oh, there's a snake. Don't worry.
That's what a knife and a stick is for.
We didn't have elephants today, but we did have machine guns.
So we felt a little bit.
It's a nice substitute.
So you can't find an elephant but last minute kind of, substitute. You can always pull in a machine gun. I'll remember that next time I'm at Renfest.
Next time you're at Renfest and we can't ride the elephants.
We'll just get the machine guns out instead.
Yeah.
It'll be great. I like the
Texas.
picture of him being like that big darky geologist, like pulling up the rock and like looking at it and like, I don't know, like miming geology. Like if you're going to mime a geologist or doing something like that.
Like, guys, I swear, I'm here to look at rocks. Please don't shoot me. I'm not doing anything. I just want to see the rocks.
Like in his rock.
He also just bamboozled you fool. They made him walk it like a day and a half.
And there was no quartz.
Yeah.
There was nothing there.
She said they were lied to. Was that intentional or accidental lying?
That is some foreshadowing, actually. We're going to find out at the end of this episode. More information about that, actually. I also like when he's like, and then what do you call those things? I'm like, they're slinkies! They're slinkies! The
little things that go down the stairs.
little things that go down the stairs, leeches and slinkies.
Little leeches, yeah. Those are definitely exactly like slinkies you buy at H-E-B.
I'm very much not... I don't enjoy the thought of a horde of leeches slowly crawling towards you on all sides as you're trying to take a rest.
Isn't that like a meme thing where you can, like, have infinite life, but there's a snail that's trying to kill you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's you have infinite life, but there's a snail that's always trying to kill you, and if it touches you, you're
The
dead.
snail
Yes.
is indestructible.
That's-
People like theorize ways they contain the snail.
Yes, this is what I picture.
It's always moving.
There's always a snail moving towards you, except it's leeches. I think I'd rather have the snail.
I think I'd rather have the snail.
But yeah, and imagine being in a place like, yeah, they're gonna rob us tonight, so we just have these guns here just in case. Like,
Shoot at random things you see in the dark.
I don't want to sleep here. Can we just not sleep here? I also like Frank's story of like the people not like liking it as if I wish it happened to me, but imagine getting poked and there's people surrounding you with a machete and you're like, holy crap, and then you're like, oh yay, machine gun guy. Thank you. This is perfect timing. I love machine gun guy.
Well, anyway, we get to this little village where these people are mining. And by mining, what they're doing is they're using these big hydraulic nozzles. Maybe you've seen pictures of the 49ers in the old days in which they were along the rivers and they would have these water cannons that would shoot way out in there and they would hit the ground and then the water would run back into the troughs and then they would collect the gold. Well, when I saw this, I said, wow, I'm back in the 49er days where they actually have these big nozzles. And what they have is little chutes that go way up in the mountains to bring all this water to them. And it's forced into this nozzle. Well, during one time I got to actually hold one of those nozzles. They got great big rocks on it and all this sort of stuff. So look at it on the internet, the hydraulic mining that they used in those days. It was just absolutely spectacular. And there was so much water pressure that when it would go like across this distance in there, and when it would hit the rock would literally explode. And the tungsten deposits here, it's called a gryson. And what it is that maybe 100-foot thick layer over the top of intrusive igneous rock that was full of fluorine. And because the overlaying rock wouldn't let the fluorine through, the fluorine carried a lot of fluorite and wolframite, which was the tungsten mineral, and cassiterite, which was the tin mineral. So then as time would go on, this would all erode, and then this rock would become soft. So all you had to do was hit it with a hydraulic monitor, and the water would come down the hill, and then they had these big sluice boxes, big long troughs. And that's how they would go and collect the tin. Well, when we stayed at this place, decided one day, Frank and I, we decided to go in different spots, different areas. So I went to this one area. Now what happened in here, that we had just gotten Polaroid cameras. And they're the ones that you flick open and you could take a picture, and they were metallic ones, and they were the really fancy one. And I bought lots of rolls because I wanted to take pictures of this for my reports. Well, I had my camera with me, and I was going to take some pictures, but I hadn't yet. And I reached in the sluice boxes, and I took some samples, and I was looking at it. So I was putting some in a bag, and was kneeling down, wasn't paying much attention, and I felt uneasy. Something's wrong here. And I looked up, And here were the miners coming toward me. And they had their machetes in their hands. And they were hitting the palm of their hands with the flat part of the machetes. And they were coming toward me, and they were letting me know that they were really unhappy with me stealing their mineral deposits in there, their tin. And they got closer to me, and they got closer to me, and they were yelling at me, and I realized, shit, I don't have anybody with me that speaks Siamese. I'm in real trouble, and I shouldn't have done that. And there's no way I'm going to explain my way out of this. What am I going to do? And I looked down, and I remembered my Polaroid camera, so I said, I took my hands, whoa, 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 and I did this like here, and stop, stop, stop. And they stopped for a minute, and I took out the camera, and there was a flash, because it had a flash with a camera. So they all stopped for a minute, and they started coming in there, and then the camera came out, and I took this here, and I was waving, because you had to let it go into the air for about 15 seconds or 30 seconds or so before the picture came out. So they approached me real carefully, and I held it up for them to go look at. Oh, they thought that was the greatest thing that they'd ever seen in their whole life. Suddenly, I became their best friend. And so they all went and get their family members, and I ended up shooting 2 rolls of film that I didn't want to use, but I could go and pick up whatever I wanted. There was no problem at all, so they were real happy with that. So that was a really close call.
So this one started off kind of like rocks, 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 and then the rocks did rock things, and then there were more
It
rocks.
was super exciting.
It was super
And
exciting.
then it was a boom boom.
And then there was a boom boom. Tell me about the boom boom.
They threw stuff and it exploded and created bigger rocks into smaller rocks.
Tungsten.
Tungsten.
Tons
They're mining wolframite. You know how the atomic symbol for tungsten is W? That's because it used to be called wolfram.
Really?
Or, well, think about gold is AU, or
Because it's arum.
iron, or lead is plumbum,
Plumbum.
iron is ferrum,
Right.
wolfram is the tungsten. That's why it's called wolframite. I don't know if it's tungsten is W because it was used to be called that, or if it's just we've already used T somewhere else. But
For like titanium.
TI.
TI.
That would
How do you know this?
I've taken 2 years of chemistry class, Bernard, and I pay attention.
Wow, I've had 1 science year my entire life, and it's this year, and it's just biology.
Well, when you get older, you don't take science. You take specific sciences like physics or chemistry. You don't just take a class called science.
So you take all of them at once.
Yes.
Yay. Anyway.
Anyway, this is one of my favorite dad stories, and the one that I always remember from even when I was super duper young is the story of the Polaroid camera.
I've heard this one before.
I have not.
Yeah.
I've heard that a Polaroid camera saved his life, but nothing else than that.
Do you know what a Polaroid camera is?
It's where you take a picture and the little thingy comes out. I have a few in my room.
Oh, yeah.
Thingy, and then I gotta shake it.
Yeah, you gotta shake it. It became kind of like a retro cool thing to do like a while ago.
Like 2016, when I was like 4. But
We actually still have a jar full of pieces of dirt, probably wolframite, in the closet over there that has some of the samples that he took. So we actually have the samples that he collected when he was in Thailand from this exact experience. It's pretty cool. So yes, the Polaroid camera, and just imagine, I just picture all these guys coming out with their families and like, look at me, take a picture of me and my family. And I wonder if these people still have those pictures. Like, it would be just so cool to see what those pictures, if they were kept or if they were treated well or, loved or...
they probably didn't know how to treat them well, though.
Well, as long as you keep them, I mean, they should be in pretty good shape. Pictures do fade over time, but oh man, I would just...
It's been like 20,
50
years.
50 years.
We were there the 10 days, and now we're supposed to have 3 elephants that's supposed to come. We'll have to have one that's going to carry all of our supplies. We'll have Frank will ride one, put his suitcase on one. I'll put my suitcase on mine. Well, they came up with 2 elephants. We had all these samples, so we had to go and load the mineral samples on one elephant because we had several hundred pounds of it. And we had to put all our luggage and everything else on the other elephant, and there was no room for us to ride. So that meant we had to walk out. All right, so what I did, I always put chlorine in my water, and I had these great big canteens, and I was carrying them around with me. It's going to take us about 8 hours for us to walk. Now, luckily for us, we picked the day that it didn't rain. So we're walking down, and the Thai geologist said, no, let the helpers there carry your water. No, I'm going to carry my own water. And he just absolutely kept insisting upon it. Okay, I'll let you carry the water. So I took a little bit of a drink in it, and it was gone about an hour or so. And they were heavy, so I gave it to it. So a couple hours later, I was really thirsty. So I said, let me have my canteen, where the workers drank all the water. There was no water. And the only river was way down the hill down there, and of course that was just full of all kinds of diseases and everything else, and there was no way that I was going to drink that water. So I was really starting to dehydrate, and Frank was too. And it was getting worse and worse and worse as we were going along, and it was hot, and it was almost getting to the point where we weren't sweating anymore. And then we saw this big Thai guy that came in there, and he had a gun strapped to him. Oh, shit, who is this? Well, it turns out that he was a government agent that was up there looking for drug runners for the opium. And he was so scared to go by himself, so he wanted to go with us. And I said, no, I don't want him going with us. Then maybe they'll come and they'll kill all of us just to get him. But I lost that battle. So anyway, we finally, after 8 hours, and I'm telling you, I am so dehydrated. My mouth is cotton. I'm having a little bit of delusions and everything else. And I'm not going to drink the river water yet. And it's not raining. We come to this little village on the River Kwai. We finally got to the River Kwai. We didn't come exactly out where we wanted to. We'll have to catch a boat to get back to our, quote, home village. So they had a little store there. And they had a little refrigerator, and they actually sold Fantas and Cokes. I drank 12 large bottles of Coca-Cola. I was that thirsty. That's the most I ever drank in my whole life at one sitting. Got to, the large bottles that we have of Coca-Cola? I drank 12 of those. I'll never forget how thirsty I was on that one. And then on the way back, we caught a boat. There was just us on it. And I had a cassette tape. It was one of the songs that I played with the John Denver songs, so Pasa La Condor, whatever it is. And to this day, every day I hear it, I think of that song and us going down the River Kwai at about 30 miles per hour on these big Long John boats. So as we go around the bend, there's somebody that's standing there waving for us to stop. So I said, okay, go ahead and stop. Well, there was a guy there that was dying of malaria, and he needed to go to the hospital. His relatives and him got on the boat, and before we would get to our destination, he would be dead, so he would die. We got there pretty close to evening. I think it was at Kanchanaburi. From there, Frank wanted to spend the night. I said, no, I've had it. It was just dark, and I could catch a taxi to go to Bangkok. It was about a 3-hour drive. So I caught a taxi, went into Bangkok, checked in a motel, and it was like 9:30 at night or something like that. And so I put on my suit. There was a revolving restaurant like you have in Seattle on top of the Space Needle. So here I was on top of that needle. I remember this day I had kangaroo tail soup, and I had a big steak. And here was this girl from Australia, and she was the musician there, and she was singing. And here I was thinking, you know what, this is just incredible. That morning, I had been on a boat going 30 miles an hour in the middle of the jungle in the River Kwai, where we picked up somebody that had malaria and died on the boat. Here I am with a suit and tie, drinking wine, having kangaroo tail soup, having a big thick steak, and listening to music provided by an Australian female singer. I just thought, wow, what a difference in life that I could be in one day, I could be like this, and the next day I would have something else that would be a totally different lifestyle.
And he died.
And the guy died.
Poor guy.
Poor guy.
Also, that's a lot of Coca-Cola.
That's a lot of Coca-Cola. When he's saying these big bottles, he's not talking like 20 ounces. He's talking like those 2 liters.
Oh, he's talking about the 2 liters?
Seriously?
Yeah.
I drank 24 liters of... I'm fairly certain
He's talking about 20 ounces.
He would be talking about 20 ounces.
Are we doing a Google challenge to see when they started making 20-ounce bottles?
No, I'm Googling liters of water required to kill a person. 6 liters to kill a 75-kilogram person. You can kill yourself with 6 liters of water. So, I mean, maybe he drank you said 20 ounce times 12 is 240 ounces. What's ounces to?
So what did he say? He said 12 Cokes.
12 Cokes.
12 large bottles. Okay, so what was a large bottle?
A fluid ounce is about 1/33 of a liter. So still, 22. That's still like 9 liters.
Okay, let's see. What was the how big was a 1950s Coke bottle? It says the 10-inch. Okay, family size was 26 ounces. The king size. Okay, I'm mistaken. It says 1955 saw the debut of the king size 10 and 12 ounces. So does that make more sense?
10 ounces times 20 gives you 200, which translates...
No, he had 12 bottles.
Oh, 12. 220 ounces divided by 30-ish gives you about 4 liters. So
that would be believable if you were...
Yeah, especially because it's Coke.
And if you're dehydrated.
And if you're significantly dehydrated,
Like
yes.
he was.
I'm thinking about the caffeine hit, too, though. I think I'd
Yeah, that's what I was
shaking.
just wondering, because that's a lot of... How much sugar is that?
Not enough. You can never have enough sugar.
Okay.
Let's spend some more time doing the math on this.
Yay!
I think that's really important. It's an important part of this discussion.
To know exactly how much Coke. Now everyone who's listening knows how much Coke it takes to kill a person.
Yes, at least six liters.
6 liters is the water value that came up when I Googled it.
Okay, so anyone, don't drink 6 liters of water or else you'll die.
Well,
Glad
you
we got
can.
the point to the story of...
That's definitely the point of this
Well,
entire
that's an
story.
important thing because they used to, because, like, what do you call those things? Fraternities got in trouble for hazing when they would make people drink too much alcohol. So, like, haha, we're going to get around it and make people drink water. And then people started dying of drinking too much water. And then they're like, oh, dude. I'm like, well, maybe you should just stop hazing people in general.
Okay, how did we get to fraternities?
Well, it's a stream of consciousness podcast.
I
Really.
don't know what that means.
It's like when you think about one thing and then you think about the next.
Random BS. Right?
No, it's called ADHD brain when you just start following comet trails and rabbits.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, I like how it's like there was this guy that really needed our help, and I was gonna be like, nah, dude, you can be on your own, but apparently
He died anyway.
no, the guy was looking for drug runners.
Oh yeah, he was like, I got my machine gun, but I'm scared.
I'm scared. Like, can I hang out with you guys? And my dad's like, no. He's like, but I guess they're gonna hang out with us
Me and
anyway.
our elephants alone.
Yeah. Can you imagine?
So they were talking about these... they were talking about these, like, jungle trails that they were walking on.
Uh-huh.
But they had elephants.
Uh-huh.
So were these large jungle trails, or were they...
Tiny elephants.
Tiny elephant. Were these large trails or miniature elephants? Is that your question?
Yes.
I would imagine that they had to be big enough trails for elephants, but not big enough or reliable enough for a car.
But elephants are bigger than a car.
Right, but they can step on things. They don't have to have a smooth surface. They don't have to roll. Elephants don't roll.
Yeah. Think about why there are no animals in the entire world that roll. No animals roll around to do things because it's very inefficient.
What about a kitty?
Okay, that's called scratching your back.
That's belly rubs
Kitty
is
doesn't
different.
Kitty's main form of transportation is not rolling around.
Sleeping.
That's not a form of transportation.
It's
a form of-
transportation to the dream world.
I was about to say.
So, yes, I would say probably larger trails, but probably not like marked or anything. Like you probably wouldn't be able to find your way around without a guide or anything like that.
Just out, like, just the grass is matted down.
Yeah, like I think like the way our dogs make trails in the backyard, just bigger versions of that. Elephant-sized versions of that.
Like, in our backyard, we have that, like, a little pathway, and then the pathway curves back into the pathway.
Yes.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I
It's
do.
like a straight line, and then, say the straight line is 10, you'll move the path, and it'll be at 8 on, like, a number line.
I get it.
Wait, start over?
It's 10, so it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right?
Yeah, I know what a
So-
number is.
You're gonna punch you. And then it goes from 10, and then it curves back down to 8, right?
And you just...
And then, so you cut, so you walk through instead of going through the trail, it's quicker to go across.
Oh, you're talking about just cutting off the edge of like when.
Yeah.
Okay, you're cutting corners.
Yeah.
Okay, that was the most complicated way of describing cutting the corner.
I thought you were talking about like the real imaginary number plane. No, we're talking
I
about
don't know what that is.
cutting corners.
I forgot the word for cutting corners. I was like, let's make it.
We ended up with a number line. Let's specify that the numbers go 1 through 10. Naming
Come on,
each
guys.
integer in between.
Integer.
Integer.
We would go back to Bangkok. Ken Sagasur, my boss from Singapore, was there, and the consultant was there. Frank and I got there at the same time with a taxi to meet with him, and I said, you lied to us about that quartz deposit. There was none in there. And you know we risked our lives going through that, and we were in this Golden Triangle area. You didn't tell us about that. Well, I kind of figured you could figure that out by yourself. I thought I saw something like that. And I reached over to hit him. And I swung my fist, and Sagasur pulled me back. Let me go, let me go. I'm going to get that bastard. He went and was willing to risk our lives, and not his lives, for something that he knew was a complete lie. That's the only time that I actually went out of my way to actually hit somebody because they lied to us about that. This day, I'm still angry about that. Why would he go in and make up this story when he knew that when we would get there, we would find out that all of this was a lie? But anyway, that was quite an adventure. Of course, I wouldn't trade that for anything. And now it's fun to talk about it because it's over with. Well, the result would be I got a bunch of reports that I wrote up on it. I think I still have copies of the reports in the garage. You can read all about the mining and about the amount of tin that would be there and the tungsten. The trouble is that the price of tin now started to fall for some reason. And the price of tungsten started to fall because the Vietnam War was closing down. And U.S. Steel decided that this would not be something they'd be interested in, especially that far in the jungle because of the infrastructure and everything else. And so they spent a lot of money for me to go and do that, and we did absolutely nothing on that. So that's what happened with that particular adventure. So I'm going to shut it off for now. Maybe I'll go into another time.
So the guy did lie.
There's geology drama going on.
Yes, there was geology drama.
So
Liar, liar, pants on fire.
indeed. So just why, like thinking about reasons why he would lie. So he said the U.S. wanted this tungsten and tin for the war effort, given that the price of tin and tungsten was going down because the war was slowing down. Mm-hmm. Therefore, so do you think that this guy purposefully misled the people looking for tin and tungsten for the reason of trying to slow down the success of the U.S. in the war effort, or is that too much of a stretch?
I think maybe he was just stupid and he was like, well, it could be. And like, I don't really care that much. So, I mean, they could go look at it. If it is, it is. If it isn't, who cares? Like, he probably didn't have the emotional maturity to think like, wait, this could actually be like legit dangerous.
It's a risk I'm willing to take.
Yes.
It's a risk I'm willing for you to take.
Yes, exactly. I think that's kind of what that would be my guess. I don't think it was probably not as nefarious of like
it's not
somebody trying to undermine the U.S. war effort. No, I think it was just a dude who was, incapable of basic, empathy and just be like, well, it could be there. I don't know.
The two options are nefariousness or
incompetence.
stupidity.
Yeah, I'm going to go with incompetence and stupidity. Yeah, so I love that apparently my dad almost punched somebody one time.
And that's
It's
the
the
meanest.
only time he's ever. I swear.
I swear. It's like the one time. I also, like he says, and it's fun to talk about now because it's over with.
No, yeah, that's very true for like literally everything. Like the Europe trip. It was amazing. Looking back on it.
At the time, you're like, oh,
At the time,
It was waking up at 7 so you can go to a museum. That's a really popular museum. You look at it.
You're like giving the worst examples.
Yep.
You're like, the worst thing that happened to me in my whole life is this one time I had to get up early to go to a museum.
No, I'm saying, but
Say
doing
like
that.
the antidepressants that made my
didn't let me
depression worse.
finish.
No, we had to go to the museum.
So I think about that a lot whenever bad things are happening or
scary, or not scary or bad. Usually when things are scary or bad, you're worried about other things. Stressful. We'll say stressful. I was like, you know what? This is going to be a really good story.
I feel like that's most of his life.
Yes. It gets me, I think it's good advice. Anything that you get through is going to be a good story once you get on the other side of it.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. This was produced by Clever Fred Studios. Our intro music is This Is My Town from Slipstream. Special thanks, as always, to Kevin and Bronwyn for taking the time to listen to these stories again with me, and of course thanks to my dad for taking the time to record them in the first place. Here's a sneak peek at what's coming up next time.
So there was a bookcase behind me, so I picked up the book and turned it over and opened it up, and just as I started reading it, a tarantula crawled over the top of the book onto the part that I was reading. So I carefully got up, took the book to the outside, shook the book, and the tarantula went flying. And I came back and started reading, and nobody said a damn thing.